All right. Welcome to this unique style show that we're doing today. We're not reviewing any particular book or show today. We're just going to have a discussion about our media consumption from the past couple weeks, what books we've read, what shows we've watched, things that have piqued our interest. And today I am the centrist of us, whatever the hell that means. And we have Andrew, bibliophile Mindgasms. You don't know what a bibliophile is. It's a book lover.
Yep.
I am also a bibliophile as well. Doesn't mean that you're a Bible lover. It means that you're a book lover.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we're gonna go ahead and have a little short chat. It's not gonna be like a super long, dragged out thing that we usually do. That's over 2 hours. We're just going to talk about some of the media we've been consuming lately and, making our recommendations and our kind of quick, I would guess, lightly spoiler free, regarding what we've seen or heard and maybe potential for expanding on some of these books or shows later into a full show. So, Andrew, what have you been reading and watching lately?
Well, I've been reading lately a lot of short stories in this short story collection by H.G. Wells, who wrote The Time Machine and War of the Worlds and The Invisible Man, of course. And I've been reading a lot of short stories in that collection. So that's interesting because H.G. Wells kind of basically goes into all of the different similar genres in which he writes. He does some horror and some science fiction, basically, and kind of borderline fantasy stuff too. So, and some of those in particular too are really interesting. There was one I read today. I guess I won't say the title of it, just in case I'm mildly spoiling something. It's about how basically a character tricks another character into um, into meeting him so that he can steal his body and and basically switch souls with him, steal his soul and put his soul into the younger guy's body and put the younger guy's soul into his body, which is a really fascinating concept.
Yeah, it's certainly fantastical in nature. Seems a bit ahead of its time if we're talking about, H.G. Wells. That's didn't he start writing like over a century ago?
Yeah, I think that was the early 1900s or something like that. Yeah, somewhere around a century ago.
Yeah, and he was um, one of the first like sci-fi writers. He's often attributed with that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But I know
Like,
there's like children's stories and things about people going to the moon, but it's far more fantastical. Um, whereas H.G. Wells tries to get a little bit more scientific about things.
yeah, yeah, like if you look at other classic sci-fi that's a little bit later but still classic, like Robert Heinlein, for example, a lot of his earlier stuff is definitely YA sci-fi with not any like hard science fiction concepts or nothing even approaching that, nothing similar to H.G. Wells' work.
Yeah, how would you consider the pulpy sci-fi that was written in regards to Princess of Mars and that author?
Oh, Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
don't even really consider that too much sci-fi, because it's more like fantasy with light sci-fi elements in it.
yeah. Um, I don't know. It's yeah, I guess like the only science fiction aspects really are the teleportation device that the character uses to be teleported to Mars, and then on Mars it is kind of a fantasy world where he is fighting aliens and stuff, but they get into sword fights and there are fights with monsters and things like that.
Hmm. I think on Mars he doesn't need like a breathing device or anything. It's just regular old atmosphere up there.
Yeah. I don't see the link for our chat here. I know I saw that it said that we're live though. I don't
We
know why
certainly are live.
yeah. I don't know why I'm not
The
seeing it when I go to your channel. Hmm.
that's strange.
Say,
Weird.
oh, okay. It just got put way down the list of your videos. I don't know why. I found it though.
Okay. Yeah, so the only reading I've done in the H.G. Wells has been The Time Machine. And I think shortly after I read The Time Machine, I watched the movie, which
Oh, okay.
definitely
Yeah.
had a different ending than the book did.
Yeah. What do you think about the book in comparison to the movie? And you mean the more recent one with Guy Pearce? Because I saw the I saw that one and maybe at least one other version of a movie way before I read the book, and then when I read the book more recently, which is really short, I liked that a lot more than the movie.
Yeah, I've seen the Guy Pearce film. I think it seems like the Guy Pearce film kind of takes the story a little more seriously than H.G. Wells does. Um, and he tries to make like a big bad guy who's like a mastermind at the end, and this character doesn't exist at all in the book. But I thought the special effects looked nice.
Yeah, that's
Thought
true.
Guy Pearce did a good job portraying the character. But yeah, it was okay. I thought the natives that he kind of comes into contact with, because I remember in the story he couldn't really understand them. They spoke a different language, and
Yeah.
he kind of had to speak to them through gestures, to try to understand. I think also in the movie he goes through more eras, because I know he stops in different points of time that are more contemporary. Because I know the final point before he goes to like way, way, way in the future, it's like chaos in the streets and like the moon is broken up,
Right.
and then we don't have. Do they have the same ending sequence? Because I know in the book he kind of like seemingly travels to what seems like the end of time or something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly that they had that ending different in the movie. They didn't have the kind of more ambiguous or somewhat ambiguous ending like that. I seem to remember that being one of the reasons that I liked the book more, which is kind of more really a novella.
Right, yeah, it is a pretty short book. It's not, I think it's no more than like 100 odd pages, but it's not
Yeah,
very long.
I think the audio book is maybe 3 hours or so.
Right, it's not long. I remember going through it. I think I initially wanted to read it because I was at that point in time I was basically following whatever the legendarium read. So every week I would check out what they read and see if I can check out the books from my library or find the audio books. As I know that was one of the sci-fi books they covered. The only sci-fi book for I think they call it like Heroes of Sci-Fi or something, that series.
Oh
The
yeah,
only one
yeah.
yeah, the one I didn't get to was Sphere by Michael Crichton.
Oh yeah,
But
I read that. I read that one. I saw the movie years ago, and then I read the book only more recently. I think it was last year or the year before that. And I liked the book more than movie as usual, but I thought they were really similar for the most part.
oh, okay, cool, man. So yeah, H.G. Wells, I definitely got to get into more of his stuff. I have
Yeah,
like
all of his
a
classics like
volume.
War of the Worlds and The Invisible Man are really good too. Um, I don't know. I mean, I kind of like The Invisible Man short story equally to the Hollow Man movie, I would say, partially
Is
because
the Hollow Man an adaptation?
I would say definitely Hollow Man is an adaptation in everything
Okay.
but name that Paul Verhoeven made. And uh, I like Paul Verhoeven's movie because I like his movies, and even though it's much more serious than some of his satirical ones that I actually like more, but it really expands on the concept a lot more of invisibility and it being a godlike power and that sort of thing and the corruption of godlike power. So I really like that. So I like it for different reasons than the book because I like the book even though it's much simpler because it's more there's more ambiguity in it and you're you're just kind of asking more questions than you are in the movie.
hmm
Yeah. Um, Anyway, I also, as I've been telling you, I've been reading book three of the Malazan series, Memories of Ice. And yeah, I won't go into spoilers or anything like that, but um, obviously both of us have been reading this series. I think you're in book two.
I'm gonna start book two soon. I haven't
Okay.
started it yet.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. All three of them so far have been I really like the world they're creating, but each one of them is kind of different. Book two has mostly different characters from book one, and book three has a lot more characters from book one than book two does, but also some characters from book two, along with other new characters. And the story structure is different from book one and book two, and I find it a little bit easier to figure out what's going on now because there are more consistent appearances of characters, and I'm understanding their motivations more, and there's a tiny bit more exposition with characters talking about the magic system throughout the book, and the that helps with the world building too. And the pacing is different in this one. It's kind of like it seems like a lot of the first half of it is a build up to basically an epic war, and it feels like I've finally gotten to that part. So I'm still basically enjoying it just as much as the first two. I like them because they're very similar in a lot of ways, but like different enough that they're always fascinating to read, I think.
Mm. Yeah, because I've only finished the first book. I know when I first read it, I had a lot of trouble following the plot.
Hmm.
And when I first read it, I actually got through 90% of the book. On the second read through, or uh, it seems like a lot of the things that had been going on for the most of the book do get kind of wrapped up and explained, like in the last few chapters or so.
Hmm.
Um, that most of the main plots and the character motivations. However, the way that the magic system works is not really explained very good.
Hmm.
They don't attempt to explain it. I'm not saying that they
Yeah.
do,
No.
but it seems in the first book the magic seems very soft. Like the system
Yeah.
seems pretty soft.
And that's really interesting too, because it seems like like as you learn more about it, it becomes more of a hard magic system. But
Hmm.
I also have watched cheated and watched videos about the Malazan magic system and stuff like that,
Hmm.
because I figured it would be useful to learn more details about the world without getting into like major spoilers. And
Right.
the apparently Steven Erickson actually doesn't really like hard magic systems. So you
Okay.
can learn more about it, but it's still not totally a hard magic system, and there still deals details about it that are unclear, and there are sometimes
Hmm.
inconsistencies in terms of how it works and that sort of thing.
Yeah, one thing I did notice is that um, I do feel that there's a little bit of Cosmere vibe going on, mainly on how the gods work, because the gods seem pretty fallible in this world, at least as they explained it, at least in the first book. Because I know there's this one duo, this pair of gods that are kind of like these twins,
Mm-hmm.
and he Param forces one of them into another god's realm,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like terrified, and he's not really acting like a god at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
That is
it,
really is interesting the way they approach gods and demons and how all of their motivations can be different and how they can move around their souls between different bodies. And yeah, I mean, no spoilers, but even in book 3, like you were saying, in terms of the Cosmere vibes, I'm starting to see that a little bit more and more as I go on, because it looks like there's there's part of the plot to do with some sort of renegade god, and it's I kind of have the feeling that that's going to keep becoming a larger part of the story, especially since the name of the name of the god is, I'm pretty sure, the same name of one of the books.
okay, I know. It also seems like the gods themselves have like a lot of constraints on them. It seems like they are bound by particular rules and contracts that they can't break, similar to um, the gods from the Cosmere.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
but it seems
dude,
like the
just I just want to interrupt you for a second. I'm sharing our video, and the random thumbnail that your channel chose is of me in the middle of taking a bong hit.
oh
Sorry, I just
man.
wanted to say that. That's funny.
Okay. Um, but yeah, I am really looking forward to getting into the world of Malazan. Um, I know the 10 main books, and then there's another 10, or how many of the other author did he write?
That's a good question. I'm gonna check that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, Ian C. Esselmont, who is Steven Erickson's friend, wrote some books in the Malazan universe too, and he did that because they both came up with the idea of the series based on a campaign that they were doing in Dungeons and Dragons. So they created
Okay.
this whole story based around this game campaign that they were doing in Dungeons and Dragons, which is like the nerdiest thing ever. That's so awesome.
Well, the interesting thing is that a lot of fantasy books start that way. I've read a few that have started as a Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Oh, really? Oh,
Um,
okay. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Oh, so apparently there are 15 books in Malazan. So I'm assuming that means Ian C. Esselmont wrote 5 of them then? I'll ask that
Okay.
too, though.
Okay. But yeah, I can't wait to get into the next book. Um, the second read through the first book definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I think I just have an easier time with comprehension if it's an audiobook versus me reading it.
Yeah,
That
for
just
me,
might
for me,
be.
it really depends. I think um, sometimes it seems like I absorb novels better in audiobook form, but sometimes it seems I absorb them better as physical books or audiobooks. But usually, and it depends on the type of nonfiction too, in terms of nonfiction. But in terms of nonfiction, for me, if we're talking about something super academic, like some philosophy that I'm reading or something similar to that, that's probably way more easy for me to absorb in a physical book or e-book form because there's so much complex terminology being used.
I think I'll largely agree with you. I have much easier time reading nonfiction quickly versus fiction. But yeah, just me thinking about reading Foucault versus listening to Foucault.
Yeah,
I think they both have their difficulties. Um, like for me, they both are difficult.
yeah,
One of them is it's easier to. It seems to me that when it comes to audio, it's more comprehensible. However, I have a tendency to zone out more when I'm listening to it.
yeah, I do
Yep.
too, because especially since I'm usually multitasking while I'm
Yeah,
listening to it.
yeah. So, but when I'm reading it, I feel that I'm able to focus more on it.
Yeah, me too.
However, when I do that, I find myself rereading sentences a lot. Or if it's Foucault, rereading a sentence is rereading a paragraph because there'll be paragraphs that are just one sentence long, but it's a long ass sentence.
Yeah, he's way too verbose sometimes. A lot of philosophers are very bad writers, so it uh, that's why it's very difficult to speed read complex and abstract and verbose philosophy like that.
Right. Um, so what else have you been reading or watching lately?
Um, oh, I read a biography about Arnold Schwarzenegger recently, which was pretty interesting. Most of the information was not super surprising, but it was very interesting. It was like basically my main conclusion of the book was that Arnold was a fucking hardcore womanizer who said women are only sexual playthings, and it sounds like he cheated on his wife a lot and sexually harassed some women and stuff like that, which I didn't find particularly surprising because I kind of got that impression from him in that 70s documentary called Pumping Iron about when he was a bodybuilder and things I've heard people say who knew him about how manipulative he is and stuff. And it sounds like also, especially because he basically said this himself, the only thing he's ever cared about in life more than anything else is the pursuit of power. So that's not surprising either, given how he wanted to become the world's most famous bodybuilder and then the world's most famous actor, and also had ambitions for running for president too, even though he wasn't born in America. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting book.
And what's the title of this book?
The Governator.
Really? Is that
Yeah,
the actual title?
yeah, it's a really hilarious title.
Well, is there any comedy in the book itself, or?
um, Not really, I would say. I mean, it's not dark or anything like that, but it's pretty much just a serious tone, I would say.
And he basically does the book cover him banging his maid and having like a bastard son or whatever?
It actually only went into that a little bit. It kind of just basically talked about how he did that in general and didn't really go into that much of the specifics about it.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
I was banging everything,
Yeah,
basically.
pretty much. He
I don't know. I'm just having
apparently also was in an open relationship with a girlfriend before he started dating his wife. Who is it? Maria Shriver, the one who's a Kennedy. I forget his wife's name, but
yeah, I believe so.
yeah, he was in an open relationship with a girl before he even met his wife, and he didn't tell her about it for a super long time. And I think that was definitely a different woman from the maid that he impregnated too. And seems like he probably did a whole bunch of fucking around on his wife.
Yeah, I just had a hilarious yet disturbing thought. The sound of Arnold Schwarzenegger orgasming must sound ridiculous.
Yeah, probably.
uh, it's funny because you'd have to interview a woman that's actually heard it before,
Yeah.
and unless that woman was great with imitations, you wouldn't really get to know
Yeah.
what it
Could
sounded
you
like.
could
But
you
we
ma'am,
know it
could
would
you
sound funny
describe to
though.
could you describe to us what the sound was like?
Oh man. Um, all right. So, what else have you had under your belt?
Well, I don't remember whether I told you I finished reading that the last book, which is the sixth book in the Codex Aliris series by Jim Butcher, who of close, of course, wrote the Dresden Files that we both love, and I would say it's definitely my favorite fantasy series. And this is
Hmm.
definitely much more of a high fantasy series than Dresden Files is, and it
Hmm.
has a really interesting magic system. That it's an interesting elemental magic system. Um, so I definitely like it, and it's definitely worth reading. But I also definitely like the Dresden Files more.
Yeah. So I'm guessing there's no pop culture references.
No, pop culture references at all.
Okay. Um, and it only went for 6 books, and it's
Yeah.
completed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did
Yeah.
you read it or did you listen to it or a little of both?
I listen to all of them because my library has all of them as audiobooks.
And who does the narration?
Kate Redding does.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So that's why I wanted to listen to all of them.
Wow, that's surprising. I gotta
Hmm.
check these out then.
Yeah, definitely worth listening to. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess the only other thing of note that I would mention is I read one of those many books by oh shit, David Sedaris that you sent me, which is his
How many official lessons there?
nonfiction comedy. I read that one, Children Playing Before a Statue of Hercules. Oh wait, no, that one is the one that's a collection of other people's short stories that he likes. That he reads some in the audiobook, and then other people read some of their favorite short stories too. So that was actually really
Okay.
interesting too, because it's different from a typical David Sedaris book, which I also appreciate because it's typical, very bizarre, interesting, and hilarious nonfiction content.
Did you get around to listening to Naked?
I don't think I listened to that one yet.
Because that's the OCD one.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one was laugh out loud funny for me when I first read it.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, David Sedaris is definitely out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I think his
like
whole
his
family
comedy.
is out there.
Oh, yeah?
Well, his sister is like an actor.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she's a comedic actress, Amy Sedaris.
Oh, Amy Sedaris. She sounds familiar.
Um, she was in a show. What was it called? It was a show about an older lady going back to high school.
Oh, yeah, I recognize her. I don't think I've seen anything with her in it that I can remember, but I know of shows that she's been in. Oh,
I think
okay.
the show that she was in was called Strangers with Candy or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing about that show, but I never watched it.
And she's been in a number of sketch comedy shows. I think one of her most recent roles she played was in The Mandalorian.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember
You've seen
that.
the first season, right?
Yeah, was she in that?
Yeah, she's the lady who like repairs his ship.
Oh, okay. I didn't recognize her. Okay.
Yeah, she's like really dressed down in that role.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
very hard to tell. I didn't even know until I looked it up. I was like, oh shoot, that was her.
Oh, okay. Uh, all right. Well, before we get to what I watch, why don't you get into what you read first, and I gotta go pee while you start doing that.
All right. Well, I guess I'll skip all the Japanese language learning books that I've read that are by this company called Innovative Language Learning. Um, I'll just talk briefly about those because I don't want to skip them completely. But there are some hilarious voice actors in some of these like language sketches they do. Um, Specifically from the second volume. I don't know what was so golden about the second volume, but it seems like the writers for that, or at least the voice actors for that, were just like completely over the top. Um, but so far, I think I'm on the fourth level, volume two. No, fourth level, volume one. And level two, volumes one and two were like completely hilarious.
Did they
Um,
do stereotypical Japanese sounding voices or something like that?
no, it's like the voices were obviously over the top.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
nobody would naturally speak like that. Like,
Okay.
super over dramatic. And it's funny because these are supposed to be representative of what you would hear out in the world.
Oh,
But
okay.
there's this one guy who's a shopkeeper. It's like, dude, there's nobody that will talk like this in real life. He is definitely like over dramatizing his role. um, but yeah, that was one thing I've been listening to quite a bit of. Also, I finished a book called Belgarath the Sorcerer.
Is that the
Um,
David Eddings one?
yeah, so it is a standalone that is a prequel for the Belgariad books. Definitely do not read this before starting the Belgariad
Oh, okay.
at
Good to know.
all. I would not recommend it, mainly because a lot of it has to do with explaining the events that lead up to the actual series, and there are like major spoilers. So
Oh, okay.
I would not read this before reading the book, at least the Belgariad series.
Okay. Good to know.
Um, I'll just give you some light information about Belgarath, which is his name. And it's almost to the level of a Silmarillion origin story, but it doesn't go to like the very beginning of the world.
Oh, interesting.
But there is, I think the history in this book spans like 7,000 years or something.
Oh, okay.
And it
Cool.
tries to like explain all of the major events in that world that contributed to the book series of Bulgaria.
Okay. Oh, that's an
Um,
aspect of Malazan that's interesting too, right? How much time passes throughout the series? Hundreds of thousands of years, if I remember correctly.
oh, I wouldn't even know because I've only read the one book.
Don't
But
don't tens of thousands of years pass in the first book?
Not to my knowledge. I know there's like a
No?
dude that's 300,000 years old,
Oh,
but
okay. Maybe it's just that I'm thinking of.
yeah, but the first um I think the very first scene you see in Malazan is like what's her name? What's the girl? Her name?
Fellison?
No, the girl with like a noun for a name or something or an adjective. Happy or
Oh,
what's her name?
Sneak? No.
No,
I forget what it was.
it's like smile or it had something to do with a positive emotion or something like that.
Joy? No. Yeah,
Mm,
I don't remember. I wouldn't even know what
or
to look up to figure out who we're talking about.
well, she's the one that gets possessed by a god.
Oh, in there, are you
She's like
talking
the
about
assassin that gets possessed by a god,
assassin who gets possessed by a god?
and she's
You're
a
not,
girl.
hmm,
And then by
don't
the end of
remember.
the book, like the possession gets broken.
Okay.
And they kind of know that something's odd with her. At least she's a part of the bridge burners. And
Apsalar?
no, who's Absalom?
Uh, I don't
Not
know.
about the
I'm just,
first book.
I thought you were
um,
talking, which book are you talking about?
the first one.
Oh, okay. Cotillion?
No, Cotillion is the one that I think possesses the girl.
Oh, okay. Oh, I bet if I click on that, it'll say. Um,
Yeah, because in the very opening scene in the book, this girl like survives a massacre, and Cotillion comes and like possesses her or something like that.
okay.
I think
Um,
her name is like I can't remember her name. It's like friendly. No, it can't be friendly because that's from
yeah,
the
that's
book.
First Law.
That's a different. Yeah, it's a different series. It's like
Lacine?
one word,
No, that's
huh?
Empress Lacine. That's Empress
No,
Lacine. No. Oh, sorry.
sorry. There you go.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there you go.
So yeah, she the opening scene is her like getting possessed, and then the ending scene is what the fucking the that that god that gets awakened causes havoc in whatever Istan, and they defeat him.
Oh, right.
So it's all within I don't know, maybe a 1 month period that that book
Yeah,
is, I
it is a
think.
really short period of time. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's big battle at the beginning with all the mages getting betrayed, and then big battle at the end with the resurrected god.
Hmm. That was
And I
my
think
favorite part of the book.
when the resurrected god comes back out,
Yeah, well, actually, even more specifically, when Animander Rake shapeshifts into a giant dragon and there's a dragon
oh
fight between two dragons, that was my
yeah,
favorite part.
it didn't occur to me that the his race turned into dragons until he actually did it because it mentions
Yeah,
dragons earlier. And you're like, where the hell these dragons come from? They just kind of casually mention them, like they're a part of the world that we're supposed to
yeah,
know. And then we get to see that he actually turns into one, and I was like, oh, so all
that was
those
so cool.
dragons are like part of his crew or whatever.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
so
oh,
cool.
okay. But yeah, but yeah, that first book does take place within a month or so, I believe. You know, I don't think it's thousands of years. There's thousands like a really old ass character, but it's within like a month or so. So I got off the rails there. I don't even remember what book I was discussing. I think it was
You were talking
Oh yeah,
about
Belgarath,
Belgarath.
the
Yeah,
sorcerer.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty lengthy. The book is, well, I was listening to it at 1.75 and it was about 18 hours. So you
Okay.
can extrapolate from that of how big the book is. Big plus is Cameron Barley makes a return to voice the audiobook. Audiobook is an Audible exclusive, so there's nowhere else to get it other than Audible. And there's actually another book called Polgara the Sorceress, which is, I believe, another prequel that follows that character. So I'm
Okay.
looking forward to listening to that. That audiobook is voiced by a woman, so I'd have to see how that works out. And I like the writing style and the prose and Belgara. It's like I would call it uh, snarky. Because
Okay.
he's kind of an old, the main character is like an old, crotchety dude who's always snarking with fools, and um, he always has like a mouth on him, you know, tries to make quips here and there about everybody.
Okay.
But he's also a master manipulator. It's just like ridiculous in his like reach and how he pulls the strings here and there to make things happen.
Okay.
So that's interesting, at least about the that book. It's interesting because we don't see him do these massive manipulations in the main series, but we see that he's behind the scenes in a lot of things that have happened, that have occurred, that we had not realized that he was.
Oh, that's
Almost like,
cool. The fact that this book exists makes me want to read the Belgariad even more.
yeah, so I was like, shoot, he's been pulling strings for a long time, and I didn't even know that he was the one pulling these strings. It's like, because the interesting thing too is that the Belgariad, I believe, is a third person book from the
Okay.
third person perspective. And Belgarath the Sorcerer is entirely first person perspective
Oh, okay.
through the eyes of Belgarath the Sorcerer. So it's a little bit different. So you get to really be in his head the entire time because he's trying to tell the history of what led up to um, the first Belgariad book. So yeah, I finished that, loved it. I like the lore of that world, and I thought it was great revisiting it again.
Cool.
So I've also been reading the Murderbot Diaries.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
I've gotten through the first four. They are fantastic.
I agree.
Um, Fantastic short little thrillers, at least like the first four. There's a lot of interesting, cool sci-fi. Um, Not only is the technology interesting and the way that it is a first person perspective from a person that's not a person,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of interesting,
Yeah.
um, because he is not human and he thinks humans are idiots,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to security. Um, but it's interesting how he has relationships with humans and other constructs, and how he's kind of broken free from his programming a bit. And it seems that because he's broken free and these restrictions have been lifted for the most part, he pretty much acts like a human. Like he has emotions, he gets nervous, things upset him.
Yep.
And it's interesting to see like humanness, um, like the humanness in this character, even though it's not a human. It's just like if he very much resembles a human, he has a human, like his body is kind of like a androidish type of body,
Mm-hmm.
where some of it is organic and some of it is completely constructed and artificial. Um, so he can view and see the world differently from people. I know he can see the world through eyes of other constructs like drones and cameras. His eyes can literally be like a security camera that's on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll often observe his social interactions with people through these cameras instead of the eyes on his face.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting. The action is really great. Um, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who's like into, I would say even if you're into cyberpunk too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I know cyberpunk deals a lot with technology and the human soul, and I think this is kind of one of those stories as well, where hey, this thing's not human, but it's very, very, very close to being human.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very common science fiction theme too. But yeah, cyberpunk in particular.
Right. So right now I'm on book 5. The first 4 books are fairly short.
Yeah.
Like audiobook wise, we're talking about no more than 3.5 hours per book. And then I got to book 5, and it's like a full-on like novel, more like 12 hours. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's a really good read, really short read, but action packed like completely. And the character is quirky and interesting as well. It's not like this flat, dry, boring robot. He actually has some interesting opinions about himself and other humans. And he's one of those types of constructs that questions his own existence at times. So I thought it was a pretty good read, and I am enjoying the series so far.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. Yeah, the murder bot has a very distinct personality and you empathize with it a lot even though it's not human. It is very interesting little stories that and the interactions with humans and other non-human programs like that are interesting too.
Yeah, and one thing is too is like the sci-fi part of it is extremely hardish science. Like I know a lot of the science behind mostly like the way that programs think and how they operate and things of that nature are pretty spot on. I know they don't get into like, oh, we can use wormholes and stuff. Yeah, they don't go into the science of that, but I thought they did a really, really good job of, you know, showing that, showing that. And we got some comments. Somebody wrote Bruce Willis has chronic aphasia.
Oh,
Actually, it's
Centro
worse than
Deer.
that. He has FTD, which is much worse than chronic aphasia. I
I
think they
heard
just
that he
announced
I heard
that he had
something
it.
about that. I didn't hear what he had specifically, but that he had some sort of degenerative disease.
Well, aphasia is what they initially categorized it as, but I think recently they came out and they said that he actually has FTD, which is much worse. I think the typical lifespan for somebody who first has the symptoms of FTD is like 7 to 13 years or something like that.
What's FTD?
Um, Shoot, I don't know because it's one of those technical medical terms that I couldn't really tell you. I just know
Okay.
that they called it FTD. You know,
Okay.
anything that has to do with the brain is going to have some really intense like medical terms. I think it's like frontal. something something something. It has something to do with the frontal lobe of his brain. I know frontal, and I know D is for dementia, but I forgot what the T stands for. So what he
Okay.
has is a form of dementia, but it is a
Oh yeah,
pretty
what
severe form.
all I heard when I heard something about it before was dementia. I didn't hear the specific terminology.
Yeah, because his form of dementia typically has a onset at an earlier age. Like this person who they were featuring while talking about his the Bruce Willis's situation. Her husband basically started getting FTD at the age of 36,
Oh wow.
and a few years later, he is like completely nonverbal.
Wow.
Right. So it is a horrible disease for anyone that gets it.
That's
This is
awful.
kind of what Bruce Willis is going through,
Wow.
and it might be in a few years, he might be nonverbal as well.
Man, that's awful.
Yeah, at least he got this later in life than earlier. It would have really sucked if he got this when he was younger. Because typically, this is a type of dementia that starts before you're 60.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if he's had it for a while, but I know he had to quit acting because he couldn't remember his lines.
Wow. And I think I looked it up the other day when I heard about it, and if I remember correctly, I think he's 67.
Right, 67 is right.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly when the onset of FTD happened with Bruce, but yeah, we're not going to see him in movies anymore. He's retired. We're probably not going to see him in any form or fashion in public life anymore. Because as you can see, it hasn't been him himself talking about his condition. It's been his family and other representatives. So he must be in a pretty bad state as it is now if he can't vocalize what's going on himself.
Yeah.
So I'd say, yeah, Bruce Willis, hero of the 80s. It's sad to see what's happening to him,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure he's lived a pretty good life and has a lot of good family around him for his final years
That's good.
on this earth. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'll say about it. I know it's just a random comment in our
Yeah.
comment section, but yeah, we love Bruce Willis here. We've covered a few of his movies. I know we've
Yep.
covered Die Hard. I
Die
don't know if
Hard,
we
Die
covered any
Hard
other of his
2.
Die Hard. Yeah,
Yeah, we covered Die Hard, Die Hard 2, and 12 Monkeys. Any others?
right.
Oh yeah, Pulp Fiction.
Mm, Pulp Fiction. Yeah, Pulp Fiction. So three or four
Yeah.
Bruce Willis movies that we've covered.
Yeah.
But yeah, hearts out to Bruce Willis. All right.
So what book were you talking about? Oh yeah, you were talking about Belgrat the Sorcerer.
Yeah,
So
highly recommend it for anybody that loves. I call it wholesome fantasy. It's funny because Belgarath goes through some problems that are typical of depression.
oh, okay.
He becomes an alcoholic and
Oh.
he becomes like a sex addict in
Oh
this
wow.
book. Yeah, there's some traumatic event that happens to him that totally like screws him over for like a few years, and you get to see him recover from these moments. But I don't know if you can exactly call it YA. I guess you can, but um, it's a little bit more mature than your younger YA. I guess you can
So
call it YA, but it's not.
oh,
I
okay.
know some
So
YA, they don't care about the violence. It's like it'll be violent as hell, but when it comes to other more serious topics like depression and things. They kind of gloss over that stuff.
Okay. So maybe something like his Dark Materials rather than uh, those. Oh, well, I guess you could say the Rhythmatist or those Alcatraz and the Evil Librarian books.
Well, Alcatraz is like super YA,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
YA AF.
Yeah.
If I was gonna give that like a
Yeah.
category, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I would say Rhythmatist is a bit more grounded. Like it's not a bunch of comedy and quips and asides. It's um, it's kind of your typical YA. Dark Materials, that it's strangely dark. I kind of call it like grim dark YA maybe. If I were to give it a kind of category.
Yeah. Yeah. I would. Yeah. Well said. Grimdark YA.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of consider Belgariad in kind of the wholesome fantasy category. Um, but I know some people don't like wholesome fantasy. Wholesome, I like wholesome fantasy. It's like, ah, this is like the kind of stuff that you can share with your whole family. Well, not all of it. I wouldn't share Belgarath the Sorcerer with the whole family
Oh, okay.
just because of like the sexcapades and the drunken like depression that it goes into. But
I like wholesome fantasy as long as it's not as long as it's not
cheesy.
cheesy or derivative.
Yeah, I wouldn't call Belgariad cheesy.
That's good.
Yeah, I like the characters. I like the dialogue. I think my favorite character from the Belgariad is Silk, and he is like this. He's a spy. He's basically like a fantasy James Bond or something.
Okay.
um, but he's not a good-looking guy, and that's the interesting thing about that too. Um,
Okay.
they always describe him as like rat-faced, and uh, he looks like a rat, basically.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, Belgarath the Sorcerer, highly recommend. And I think that's pretty much it for the reading that I've done. Did you
Okay.
want to start talking about things you may have watched recently?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been watching Lucifer, which is that show based on the graphic novel by Neil Gaiman, who you know of course. He wrote American Gods, among many other
Mhm.
books. And yeah, that's pretty interesting because obviously it's a story from the point, it's basically a story from the perspective of Lucifer, who basically just bails on his job ruling in hell and goes to take a vacation in LA. So that's the premise of it. Typical Neil Gaiman, like contemporary interesting twist on traditional religions and mythologies, and this one's a different look at Christianity. So it's pretty
Is
interesting.
Lucifer is it in the same universe as like Anansi Boys and American Gods, or is it like its own thing?
I think it's its own thing. Yeah,
Okay,
that would be cool
okay.
if they connected those universes, but I don't think Neil Gaiman has done that. Not
That
that
would
I
have
know
been
of anyway.
interesting.
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman definitely has the potential to create his own like multiverse
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he could for sure. He could
because
do
he likes to
one
write
about
about
gods.
gods.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely a show that's worth watching. It's funny and interesting at times. like basically the theological slash fantasy aspects are probably what I find the most interesting about how Neil Gaiman tweaks with the traditional structure of the hierarchy of gods and angels and that sort of thing as he usually does. So yeah, that's really interesting. And I also, because I told you I've been rewatching movies and shows in the MCU since those Netflix Marvel shows got added to the MCU. I've been following a list of what to watch in roughly chronological order and skipping stuff that I've either watched recently or didn't like or don't want to watch, like Captain Marvel or um, I wasn't really a big fan of the first Captain America movie or the second Thor movie, but there are ones that I really like. And then, so anyway, I started rewatching the Daredevil show, so that that's good. That's cool too. And to me, it totally holds up. And I like to give one the interesting thing about watching the MCU in mostly chronological order that's cool is that I totally forgot that season one of Daredevil takes place right after or not long after the first Avengers movies because they reference
Right.
it.
So speaking of the MCU, are you also indulging in some of the other shows like Agents of Shield and stuff like that?
I am planning on watching Agents of Shield when it gets to that point in the chronology. I'm not watching absolutely everything because I'm following this super detailed list, which includes so specific as this specific special feature on the Blu-ray or something. And I'm not going to buy the Blu-ray to be able to nerd out on the MCU to that level. But then there are also all of these other shows too. Like one of them is Agent Carter. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I don't. I'm not necessarily going to watch all of the MCU shows either. Like I'm not going to. I'm don't really. I'm not really that interested in watching Agent Carter, but I'll probably watch Agents of Shield because that sounds like it would have some more interesting intersections with the broader MCU. But and yeah, I'll watch all of the. Well, not all of, but most of the other shows, like Hawkeye and WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all that. Probably won't watch Groot, for example, but I'll watch most of them.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got a phone call.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, the MCU is like ridiculously huge now.
Yeah,
I'm like so behind
yeah.
on the
It,
MCU.
on this list too, I forgot to mention it also gets so specific that it says, you know, after this movie or after this episode of this show, go to this episode of Marvel's What If, which is I haven't even watched any of that show yet, but I think it's an animated kind of YA-ish style show that show alternate versions of what happens in some of the movies and shows in different timelines in the MCU. I think that's what the premise is supposed to be.
If you get the chance, could you send me this detailed list? I
Uh,
might imbibe.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It was just one of the first ones I clicked on when I looked up MCU chronological order.
But I've
Yeah, I
never
can
heard
send
of
it to
one
you.
this detailed where they're asking you to watch like special features on a DVD.
Yeah, yeah, I was surprised. And they even go like I haven't actually read the whole details of this article that it's in. I just go to get I just skip to the bold parts where it says what specific movies and TV shows. But if when I just skim over some of the descriptions, they say you also could actually stop halfway through this movie and go to the end credit scene of this other movie and then come back to the other half of this movie. But you don't have to get that specific.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
yeah, it gets extremely, extremely hardcore. But
Wow.
yeah. Oh, so I haven't started watching The Last of Us yet, but I'm gonna start watching that soon, which I'm I'm pretty excited about that because post-apocalyptic zombie shows are my kind of thing. And I never played the game, but I heard that it's really good, and I watched my friend play it once, and it looked scary. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, I actually finished. I'm up to date with the show. So I've seen up to the current episode. So since I did that, I'm actually watching somebody play through the game and just checking in on how close they stuck to the game and how things are the same and how things differ. And so far, I was like, wow, they did a really good job at sticking to like the plot line and the story of the game. And they even expanded on, especially with the first episode. There's like a huge expansion in the story. So it does look like the show is expanding the story a bit more than what the game had told. Because you have to contend between, okay, you're going to have hours of gameplay interjected with story. And yeah, they really filled out the story a lot more in the show. Like I've only watched like an hour of straight gameplay, but it seems like um, the first like 20 to 30 minutes of the game was turned into a full hour like episode.
Okay.
So they're definitely expanding things, and I like Pedro Pascal as an actor. I think
Yeah, he's a good actor. He's been in lots of stuff. He was in Narcos, and he was in that movie with Nicolas Cage, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and he's been in lots of other movies and shows.
yeah, I think Mandalorian. Um,
Yeah, he's the Mandalorian.
yeah, Game of Thrones. Like Game of Thrones was the first thing I
Oh
saw him in.
yeah, he's the
The
poison
Sans. Yeah,
poison viper.
he plays. I don't even know the character's name. I just forget all these characters' names.
Someone Viper of the Someone family.
Yeah, he's something Martell or but I forget
um,
his first name.
I'm not sure if he's a Martell.
Isn't the Martell? Aren't they the Dornish? Aren't they Martells?
Are they?
I believe
Oh yeah, you're
so.
right. Yeah, you're right. Martell, Oberyn Martell, Prince Oberyn.
Oberyn the
Yeah,
Martell.
yeah,
There
yeah,
you go.
yeah,
Yeah. He did an awesome job playing Prince Oberyn,
yeah.
and
Definitely.
I think that's kind of
That's
been like his huge stepping stone for his acting career.
yeah. That
Because
probably
now you
was.
see him in
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. That's one of the many interesting different cultures in Game of Thrones slash Song of Ice and Fire, and that's one of the aspects that makes the series so interesting. The differences between the different cultures in terms of the world building.
All right. So yeah, Last of Us, post-apocalyptic zombie story. Um, a little bit different than your normal zombies,
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, because it's like an infection based off of fungus.
Oh okay. That's
Um,
interesting. I think I told
yeah.
you about it'd be we should do a book chat on this book sometime. There's I think I told you about there's this book written by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son, called The
Mhm.
Fireman, and it's about the start of an apocalypse that turns into a post-apocalyptic story that's based on the idea that people start to spontaneously combust based on due to exposure to this type of spore. And some people can learn to control the spontaneous fire that they get and develop pyrokinetic powers, which is really interesting.
Hmm. Sounds kind of like Broken Earth a little bit.
Yeah, it does, except better and not woke.
Yeah. But yeah, I highly recommend The Last of Us so far. I know there was a big like culture war backlash off of the third episode of
Is that one of the ones? I think it probably is because I was just wondering if Shad from Shadiversity um, thinks that it's woke, and I think if I remember correctly, I think I saw that he made a video about it that I didn't watch saying that it was woke because he thinks fucking everything is woke.
well, I'll probably check it out. Um, but I don't know. It's anything that's like I don't know how it's woke, basically. I just know that it's a untraditional love story
Okay.
explaining the background of some characters. But
Yeah, that's often misinterpreted as being woke by people who are looking to do that.
yeah, I don't know how it's woke because usually woke there's some type of message that has to do with like
Yeah, like grandstanding.
grandstanding about marginalization or virtual like it's like virtue signal. There's no virtue signaling in that episode. It's just two characters that just happen to be gay,
Okay.
and that's that. Um, and they, I don't know. I didn't find it woke. I guess if the
Yeah,
characters are
that has to be why the
because
usual
they're gay,
people that yeah think it's woke because they're not straight, therefore it's woke.
and from what I understand, the characters were originally gay as well in the video game.
Oh,
So I believe so.
that's
I
weird.
haven't
That's
gotten
even
to the
more
part
weird
where
to have a
they're
problem with it then.
yeah, I haven't gotten to the part where they're introduced because I know this is what I've been told, or at least from doing a cursory amount of research and from watching the behind the scenes, that in the game one of the characters is still alive and the other one died,
Oh, okay.
and you never get to see that character.
I know that
Um,
I watched my when I watched my friend play a little bit of the first game a while ago, I remember enough that one of the two main characters dies.
oh yeah, that happens. You're gonna see that in the show too. I think that's
Okay.
like episode 3.
Okay.
um, yeah, it's your typical zombie fare where you get to see, they build up characters and they get killed off. It's
Right.
kind of what's gonna happen.
Yep. That's usually
Um,
my kind of show if it goes well. As long as it's not
right.
something like The Walking Dead that starts off amazing and then gradually gets worse and worse.
Well, I don't know because I heard people don't like the second Last of Us game, so I have no
Oh,
idea.
really?
Yeah, I don't know if I heard like the first game is critically acclaimed. The second game I also believe is critically acclaimed, but there are a lot of people who've had a problem with it. Um, I know for sure, like super culture war people hated the second game because I think there's like gay characters in it or something like that.
Oh, like the
But
people who always think that everything is woke?
yeah, those people hated the second game. I
Okay.
try to look for centrists that have talked about the game and get their perspective. And I think some black guy covered it, and he said like the problem with the game is that the characters are just unredeemable and not likable. So I don't know how. I think I'm probably eventually going to watch some type of playthrough of that game as well. Because I'm going to have to
Okay.
consume the original
Well,
source material somehow. I'm not going to
characters
play these
being
games.
unredeemable don't have to make a story bad, because there are lots of grimdark stories that we both love with basically unlikable and unredeemable characters.
Well, from what I have actually, from what I've heard, like one thing is acceptable, whereas an unlikable character becomes likable. But typically, it's not acceptable when that happens in the opposite direction, or at
But
least
that's
it
so
upsets
interesting,
people.
though.
It is, but it really does upset people. But I don't know if it has something to do with the characters acting out of character or not, or if it's bad writing. I'm gonna have to review. I'm gonna have to watch the playthrough myself eventually. Like I have to take it upon myself to make sure I'm familiar with the source material somehow.
Okay.
I'm not going to play these games because I don't own the gaming systems required to play them.
Are they
Um,
on the newest, whatever the newest one is?
no, they're on. They're both. Well, one of them is on a PS3. I don't have a PS3,
Oh, okay.
and the other one I think is on both the PS4 and 5, and I don't have a PS4 or 5
Oh, okay.
because they were. It's a PlayStation exclusive, so that's why I've never played it.
You have
Like I never had
Xbox?
a PS3 after the last PS PlayStation I had is a PS2.
Oh, okay.
Um, and the
Are you?
last console I've had is just the regular Xbox One, and there's been like two iterations since then.
Oh, I'm surprised. I thought you were way more of a gamer than me.
No, I am. It's just that most of the games that play on the two new iterations of Xbox also play on the old iteration of it.
Oh, okay.
Like the new iterations or Xboxes are just like more powerful versions that play the same exact games.
Oh, okay.
And even then, if I can't play the game on the Xbox, I have a pretty decent like PC that'll run most of the stuff anyway.
Right, you have that one that I forget what it's called, but the thing that allows you to play lots of different games too, right?
Steam? Yeah, I got Steam.
Yeah.
I got a Steam Deck also, which is it's powerful enough to play Elden Ring, so
Oh, okay.
there's that. So, but when I do eventually get to Elden Ring, I'm probably gonna play it on PC. So yeah, Last of Us, yeah, I think you're gonna
Oh,
get into
yeah.
that soon.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna start watching that this week.
Yeah.
Other well, yeah, I've been I've been watching episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond too, and they
Oh
definitely still
man.
hold up. Yeah, I love that
Yeah,
show.
like years ago, me and my wife went through like the entire show from
It's a
beginning
great
to
show.
end. Yeah, it's a good, like the writing's good. Like
Yeah,
it has good writing. The parents are amazing in that show. His brother always has the most hokey facial expressions.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it does hold up, I would say.
Yeah. So I've also been watching The Simpsons too, classic comedy as well.
Really?
And yeah, I've been slowly just rewatching all The Simpsons, and I probably have not watched a hell of a lot of the later seasons because I used to just watch it casually on a regular basis, but then I
Mhm.
hadn't watched it in a long time. And
Well, back
yeah,
when
even
network TV was a thing, like Sunday night was like Simpsons night, and I watched it religiously for years, you know.
yeah, I used to watch it when I got home from school every day.
Yeah.
But
That's one of the reasons I didn't like Family Guy because I thought Family Guy was like a cheaper derivative of
that's
The Simpsons
interesting. Man, I was
with
thinking it would
crappier
be
writing.
interesting to do a podcast at some point about that subject that you brought up in that video, the
Oh,
feud
Family Guy
between Family
versus
Guy and South Park that I didn't know about.
Oh, I
That'd
didn't
be
know
fun.
about it either. I just randomly clicked on that video was randomly recommended to me through YouTube's algorithm. I was like, this seems
Oh,
interesting.
okay. Yeah,
And I was
sometimes
like,
that's interesting. Like I watched one or I watched one earlier that was a clip someone made of that guy in the pitch meeting videos where he does sarcastic pitches of scripts of blockbuster movies to a producer guy in order to mock
hmm.
them. And it was a short clip of him saying one of his catchphrases, which he just repeats something they said like fast cars are tight. So he says something is tight, and it's just a video about times he said it in really inappropriate ways. Like one of the times was when he said, "Booby, traps are tight." And the other guy said, "You paused for a long time there between the first word and the second word."
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I
I
never liked
guess
Family Guy. I was
that's
never really
interesting.
into it.
I like it, but yeah, I definitely like South Park more. And I really think that video is interesting because it points out that the jokes are kind of more shallow and have much less to do with the story, and they're these random gags that have nothing to do with the rest of the plot. I get that point, but I still think sometimes they're funny. However, I do prefer like the more the more layered approach that South Park takes, even though we're both talking about like ridiculously offensive, hilarious shows. But like I said also before, that as much as I agree with those points, I still think that's almost kind of a snobby attitude towards comedy, as if you're not good enough because you don't follow the same detailed way that I do comedy.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about Family Guy. I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't as good as The Simpsons. Um, I don't know. I just didn't really get into it. Some of those random asides just I didn't find funny at all. Like I don't know what to say. I just
I think they worked to I personally think they worked for me really well at first. I really loved the show at first, and I like it. I'll still watch it sometimes. But I think it was better in the earlier seasons, or even the earlier several seasons, and it kind of got like those all of those totally random cutaways kind of got repetitive and less funny gradually over time.
yeah, yeah. I just I don't know, just never really got into the show. Like to me it was more highbrow than Simpsons, but not I don't know. I just thought The Simpsons, it was kind of like the competitor to The Simpsons.
Hmm.
And I felt like, I don't know, Homer as a character, I found more funny more of the time because he's just like an imbecile.
Yeah.
Um, he has like the most random thoughts. Um, Kind of reminds me of the show An Idiot Abroad. Like, it is very similar, but or even the Ricky Gervais podcast.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard his early podcast?
No.
It's really funny. I think it got animated and put on HBO,
Oh, okay.
so you can actually watch it on the HBO, and it's been animated. It's pretty funny.
Oh, okay.
Um, because it's Ricky Gervais, Stephen Merchant, and this guy named Carl Pilkington. And Carl Pilkington is like the gold mine on the show.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Basically, the show revolves around asking Carl questions, and the answers that he gives are so ridiculous. But the funny thing is that he's being serious about
Okay.
the answers. It's not like he's trying to be funny. It's just that's his brain is so fucked up that he would think of these ridiculous things that nobody else would care to ponder.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds like
um,
Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, and they just laugh at him and his weird ass thoughts. Um, most of the podcasts, but I got to
Okay,
rewatch that someday because it's so funny.
cool,
I highly recommend it. Um,
cool.
but yeah,
Yeah,
I guess that was one of the things we watched. South Park versus versus. You said you're on the South Park train, right? But you like
yeah.
Family Guy, but
I'd say mostly, yeah. But I do still like Family Guy, and I don't know about like there seems to be this attitude of like snobbery and elitism towards that kind of perspective as much as I would take that side over Family Guy definitely if I had to take a side.
it seems too that like South Park is way more edgy than
Yeah,
Family Guy.
definitely. Yeah.
Like Family Guy is network television edgy, and South Park you can't really have on network TV,
Yeah.
and it tends to piss people off. I remember when South Park went through its like anti SJW phase.
Right.
I thought they handled it pretty well too. It wasn't like they were making fun of both sides. They weren't just making fun of SJWs. They're
Yeah.
also making fun of like super radical like right people
Yeah.
as well.
They're experts at criticizing all sides of an argument.
Yeah, so I remember when it got to that phase of the show, and there were like so many lefties that got pissed off by that.
Yeah.
Like,
That was so great though. Like PC Principal and Strong Woman.
yeah, because I remember I was watching that because they kind of did a little something about Gamergate in there. I was like, oh, looks like they're following this crazy shit online pretty closely.
Yeah,
That's kind of when it blew up.
the social commentary on South Park is better than any other social commentary.
Yeah, because I know they said that Family Guy tries to do it, but it's not as cutting as South Park's social commentary. Because the basis of the show is almost that is an main focus of the show is commenting on society in general. And I think they
Yep.
did a good job at showing that, okay, South Park has these two story threads and they end up meeting in the end of the episode, whereas Family Guy has two story threads and they stay parallel and never meet,
Hmm.
with the exception of a few episodes. But I'd have to say, I believe, South Park's writing is much stronger than Family Guy, even though I don't really watch Family Guy, but the little that I have watched um, tells me that they didn't focus too much on strong writing. I think their focus on
Yeah.
is on jokes,
Yeah,
but not
they don't really
on
do anywhere near as much social commentary either, I would say. They definitely do some of that, but it's usually not the main focus of the show.
right. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think it's a little elitist to bag on another comedy show, but it almost seems like like Family Guy had a huge following, and they might have been a little bit jealous about it.
Yeah.
That's what it
It's
sounds
kind of
like a
funny that
little.
they've made fun of each other on their shows though. It's good that it's led to that.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, as far as watching anything else, you got anything else?
Yeah, the only other thing, interesting thing I've been watching is I've been watching The Haunting of Bly Manor, which is interesting because it's in Mike Flanagan's horror universe, another one of those interconnected universes. And he has a bunch of different horror TV shows on Netflix that are take place in the same universe. And I think The Haunting of Bly Manor and The Haunting of Hill House are both they're both miniseries that he did, and I think they're actually about the same. They're both about the same haunted house, if I remember correctly. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's interesting because I like supernatural horror and that kind of stuff. Some of Stephen King does. That's my favorite type of horror, and I want to get into more horror and horror content in particular lately, and science fiction content because
Okay.
you know, I like horror, science fiction, and fantasy. Those basically those are basically both of our favorite genres, but I think you probably like fantasy the most. I think mine's probably science fiction, but I like all three of them a lot. But I've still read probably way more fantasy than both of the other either of the other genres.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I would say fantasy does edge out sci-fi for me.
And
Um,
I should mention Watch too, because I was talking about a show, obviously. I've just
yeah,
seen more like fantasy TV shows in particular than like sci-fi
actually, you
and
know
horror
what?
ones and movies.
Well, I think when it comes to shows, sci-fi edges out fantasy for me.
I think actually now you mentioned that there probably are. It seems like there are more sci-fi TV shows than fantasy TV shows, and
Yeah, because you
it
got to go
seems like
back to like
they're.
Star Trek, you
I
know?
think I think in terms of movies, probably horror dominates science fiction and fantasy movies, but it seems like there are more science fiction movies than fantasy movies too.
Right. And shows too. You know, there's not a whole lot of fantasy shows.
Yeah.
It's a lot of science fiction. You know, The Expanse adaptation, Star Trek, um, and all the things that go on there. You know, Stargate. There's a show for that.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a bunch of fantasy or sci-fi shows I never watched that I heard were great. Like I never got into Babylon 5.
Oh yeah, me
People
neither.
swear by that. Um, but yeah, yeah. But I think I've consumed way more sci-fi shows than I have fantasy shows.
Yeah, me too, probably.
As I've watched all of TNG, I've watched all of Deep Space Nine, I've watched all of Voyager,
Wow.
um, and nothing as far as like watch time. I can't think of any fantasy anything that even comes close to having watched all those episodes of Star Trek.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of Star Trek episodes.
Yeah, first one is 7 seasons. Deep Space Nine is 7 seasons. It's a lot of episodes, man.
Hmm.
So and just anime too. Like I love sci-fi. I think I like sci-fi anime more than I like fantasy anime.
Oh,
One of
interesting.
my favorite anime is like Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some really good sci-fi anime for sure. I want to get into more of that too, because I like Ghost in the Shell, for example, and
Dude,
I'm
you
gonna
gotta get
watch
into
that.
the series, man. The series is
I'm
awesome.
I'm gonna watch that Cyberpunk show. I think there are maybe even two Cyberpunk shows on Netflix, right?
Which Cyberpunk show?
There's Cyberpunk Edge Runner is one of them. I don't remember whether that's the only one or there's also Cyberpunk some random year 20 whatever.
Is that based off of the video game?
I no, I don't think it is. I think it's a different thing.
Oh, okay. Because I know there was a video game called Cyberpunk that
Yeah,
came
yeah.
out within the last 2 years.
Yeah, I know. I heard about that too. I think it's something different, but it could be the same. I'm not sure.
As you never know, Netflix might have the license for that too. Because the studio that made The Witcher is also the studio that made Cyberpunk.
Oh, okay. Oh, you
Have
heard
you seen
I
The
bet
Witcher?
you
Oh, you haven't
also
read The
heard.
Witcher, so
No, I haven't gotten to that one yet. There's so many series, but I bet sometime this year I will probably get into um The Witcher and King Killer. I bet I will get into those two this year, and probably finish Malazan also, or at least the first main 10 books.
Mhm.
And
King Killer shouldn't take you long. There's only like 3 books.
oh, okay. How many Witcher books are there?
A lot. Probably like 7 or 8.
Okay. And I know that
And
at
I
least
think
one
the
of
first
them.
couple are anthologies.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I know at least one of them is a collection of short stories, so that's pretty cool.
And my favorite is actually the anthologies. I like the anthologies more than the main story, actually.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I bet you heard then that Henry Cavill, after season 2 of The Witcher, he quit the show and he's apparently working on a Warhammer 40K adaptation.
Well, what I do know is that I've only seen the first season of The Witcher, and from what I watched, they stuck really close to the source material. I heard that season 2 veers widely away from the source material, which is one of the reasons why Cavill quit the show.
Oh, okay.
So, um, as far as season 2, I haven't seen it. I heard a lot of people. I heard there was a lot of hate, love, and hate. So, hate by the purists and love by the people who don't really know the source material.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm guessing it's probably good, but if you're a fan of the source material, the show might piss you off.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you and I feel pretty similar about that in terms of it depends on the execution. Like, for example, how was it episode 4 of season 1 of Wheel of Time that veered extremely widely away from the main, from the books, but also
Hmm.
was really cool?
Yeah, because it's one of the best episodes.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like not even, I don't even, not even remotely close, because there's no instance in where Nynaeve and Logain meet each other in that fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Let
Yep.
alone like
And
any
it's
any
my
of the
favorite
things.
episode of the season.
Yeah, I love that episode as well. Also my favorite. But
Yeah.
I'll probably get into finish The Witcher eventually. I just like the first season so much that I was like, man, this is how you do an adaptation. That's was my opinion about the first season of The
Sweet.
Witcher. I don't know if you do get into The Witcher, I would say read the anthologies and then watch the show.
Before the novels?
No, I'm saying the anthology. Well, the anthologies, okay. The first Witcher books are anthologies.
How many of them?
There's 2.
Okay.
So the first 2 books in the Witcher series are short stories.
Okay.
And the Netflix, they cover those anthologies.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
the first
interesting.
season of the Netflix show are the anthologies.
Oh, okay. So does that mean then that after the first two anthologies, there are novels after that, but those are not covered on the show?
They are, because they do pepper in some of the plot from the later books into the show. So when you watch the show, it actually might be a bit confusing because they pepper in between the anthologies, they pepper in some of the story from the later books. And it can be
Oh, well,
hard, it's
does it
difficult to
make
keep
more
track of the
sense
timeline.
to read the short story anthologies and like the rest of the books then before you watch the show,
It
or do you think it's
might,
just a
because
minor thing?
I've read all the books before I even watched the show.
Okay.
It might help
Okay.
to watch them all, but I would say it's safe. I would say for the most part, you would be safe to watch the show after reading the first anthologies.
Okay, that's
Because he
good to
wrote
know.
an anthology after like the last book in the series as well that
Oh,
I have
okay.
yet to get to.
A third one?
Yeah, third anthology.
Okay.
And I've also
So,
played Witcher 2.
oh yeah, how many games are there?
There's three.
Okay.
I have Witcher 2 and 3. I haven't played 3 yet. I heard 3 is awesome and it's the best of the series. I just
Okay.
haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay.
I think I will eventually, hopefully.
So, what have you been watching?
So I think I mentioned most of everything that I've been watching.
Oh, okay.
Um, I've also been trying to watch the playthrough of The Last of Us to get more familiar with the source material.
Okay.
I'm finished with Godzilla stuff for now. I think I've
You
exhausted
watched,
the options on
did you
HBO
watch
Plus.
so you watched all of the movies and the shows already?
Not all of them. I think I got one more to watch, which would be this Godzilla series on Netflix. That's like an anime series. Because there's the three movie trilogy, and then there's like a series.
Yeah, there's a new series that I haven't seen yet. I want to watch that one.
Yeah,
I'm probably haven't seen all of the Godzilla movies, but like we talked about before, I've seen probably most of them because
there's a
I went
shitload of Godzilla
yeah, I
movies.
went through a phase where I rented a whole bunch of them from the movie store that used to be across the street when I was a kid. And then I
Hmm.
saw a bunch of the newer ones as they came out, and I watched that trilogy of animes on Netflix, and I watched the newer ones too. So yeah, I've seen most of them probably, but probably not all of them.
Right, right. But yeah, I think I've covered mostly of what I watched, which mainly has been The Last of Us and Godzilla movies.
Cool.
So I wrapped up most of that, and then we covered that YouTube video I showed with you guys, which is kind of like a mini documentary
Yep.
comparing South Park and Family Guy. But other than that, I've just been watching news content, which not typically what I talk about in these types of shows. We usually talk
Yeah.
about
Your content
fiction.
is much more fiction dominated or fiction dominant than mine is, and mine seems to tend to be more nonfiction dominated, but I like to do both. And then I know we both
Yeah,
do.
yeah, I do some nonfiction, but the nonfiction that I cover is usually based off of a book.
Right.
I tend not to
Hmm.
cover current events too much here,
Yeah.
but I sometimes will
And
find fascinating nonfiction topics. Like I think one of the last ones we covered was like the violence in the 70s, like left-wing violence in the 70s.
yeah, yeah, the Black Panthers and people like that. Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting, that book, talking about that book. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
and I think we talked about woke
tomorrow.
racism a while ago as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was like we were talking about. I think we mostly agreed that was worth reading. But it was kind of pretty similar to stuff that John McWhorter has said many times already on his podcast with Glenn Lowry.
Yeah, it's stuff I was pretty familiar with. Wasn't a whole lot new to me, but it was nice seeing like his arguments in a concise and coherent form instead of spread out over many discussions that he's had with Glenn Lowry.
Yeah,
But yeah, I definitely very fiction heavy on my channel. But as far as our next thing, um, I will try to get into that fifth sorceress. I know it's gonna take me a while because I gotta actually read it. Because I've
yeah. It's
listened
gonna
to the
take
abridged
me.
version.
It's gonna. Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah, and it was really different. It was apparently really different from the full version. And yeah, like I said, I'm probably gonna read the ebook. I'd say maybe next week sometime, because I still have half of that third Malazan book to read, Memories of Ice. So yeah, I can read that within a couple weeks, and yeah, like I said, I'll start watching Last of Us right away. And
Yeah, I have to figure out how we're gonna operate with my new schedule. As it's been told to me, my new schedule is gonna be midnight to 8 on the weekend. And I don't know what I'm gonna do with the content that I do at Tristram unless he operates on the Thursday.
right, yeah,
But
we'll have to check with him.
with this new schedule that I'm having, it might even be temporary.
Okay.
And from the guy that I work with is going to be the lead supervisor here, and he told me that it's a possibility I might get the 4 to midnight slot during the week.
Oh, that'd be way earlier.
Yeah, so it's basically like 8 hours earlier than when I currently work.
Oh, that'd be way easier
So
for Tristram.
yeah, it would be more difficult for you, but easier for Trisha.
Yeah,
But
well, it depends
this
on
will
the
be
day.
during the week. It's during the week. It's not on the
Okay.
weekends. And so I wouldn't work on the weekends anymore.
Oh, okay.
So I'd have to talk to my wife to see if she's okay with that because if I'm working 4 to midnight, that means I'm not going to be seen during the week uh, much of any time because she gets to work. She gets off work like at, I don't know, 3:50.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So, and I'd be coming home at midnight, and then I'd see her in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But the big advantage is I'd have weekends completely off.
Oh, okay.
So,
And if you're at work from 4 to midnight during the week, that's more opportunities to do podcasts too.
right, right. Um, but the only thing is during the week, I can't really start podcasts until like 7 to eight
Oh, okay.
o'clock because it's during the week. So that means there's going to be people here
Oh, okay.
as opposed to the weekend. It's really going to depend on the day.
Okay.
So I'll have to figure that out. Because it's not going to be like I could just start a podcast at 4,
Right.
because there's definitely people working here and I can't um, be yapping on about a
Yeah, that
subject
would
where,
yeah, that wouldn't work.
yeah, so likely it's going to be sometime in between 7 and midnight. That's probably going to be our operating time if that manifests itself. If not, um, we'll run like normal during the weekends, but I'd have to find a day during the week in which we can schedule push them on, and we'd have to see if he has availability earlier in the day because
Yeah. I bet
um,
he probably would, because I know really, like he always stays up super late to talk to us.
yeah, but it would be on a Thursday, and it'd probably have to be like around 1 or 2 my time, which I don't know. I guess would be like
I think
4 or 5 or 6 his time.
yeah. I think about 3 your time would be about 1 my time.
Yeah, because if I'm going Thursday, I'd have like a hard out at like 3:30 my time.
Okay.
So it would be like
Yeah, I think
maybe,
you and I have done that once or twice before, maybe. Just like really
yeah,
short
we used
podcasts.
to do it. Yeah, we used to
Yeah.
do shorter podcasts during the week, earlier in the day. And I was planning to do like an hour and a half at most,
Yeah, it's a good idea.
for our Wheel of Time stuff. So as far as like the next thing we're covering, I think the more likely will probably be um, the current offering on The Last of Us.
Okay.
So I know that I finished the show. What I'm going to do is go ahead and go through a walkthrough of the game, and I can make those comparisons when we next talk about this. But right now, that would be the easiest for me to do personally because I already pretty much have covered the material. As far as the fifth sorceress goes, it's going to take me a bit of time to get through that, and it's not the shortest of books from what I've heard. I think it's like 900-page book or something.
Oh yeah, it'll be like maybe 3 weeks before I'll be ready to do that one then.
Yeah, so it's not the shortest of
But
books.
how many episodes of Last of Us are there out right now?
Currently 5, and I
Okay.
watched like the first 2 in one night, and the second like 3
So
and another night.
I might be able to watch 6 episodes by next weekend.
Yeah, so just let me know. I think you'll like the show. I really want to cover that third episode, which got the internet up in a royal and riot over this. I was like, I watched it. I was like, people are upset at this shit. Like, what's wrong with people? I just didn't understand why someone was so upset. Maybe I'll find out if I watch the original gameplay, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But
Okay.
all right, man. I guess we'll start wrapping it up. Do you got any plugs for today?
Yeah, people should check out my channel, Mindgasms, where my last one was criticizing Jordan Peterson's ridiculous take on climate change activists like Greta Thunberg about how they're part of a religion promoting population control because some guy who was a climate activist said so in the 60s, which apparently means that all climate activists and all people who care about climate uh, are like crazy apocalyptic people who are anti-natalists and don't want anyone to have children and want the environment to take over or some shit. And I've also done a lot of fantasy content too about some of the stuff we've been talking about. Like I talked about the first Malazan video, and I talked about the Rings of Power show and the versus the Game of Thrones show with Daniele Bolelli. So check out all that. And yeah, tomorrow, like you were mentioning before, probably do either a current events one with Chris about things like UFOs, the Twitter files, the Russia-Ukraine war, Turkey and Syria, earthquakes, and the train crashes in Ohio, which is a lot of stuff. We're gonna either do that one or do the movie chat we've been going to do for a while about called Fat Man, which is about Mel Gibson playing a badass killer Santa Claus who gets an assassin sent after him by a kid who gets a lump of coal for Christmas. And also, the elves manufacture weapons for the U.S. military. So one or the other of those two completely different chats will happen tomorrow, based on whether just Dusty and I will talk or Dusty and Chris and I will talk. So check that out.
All right, cool. Well, yeah. Next thing we're gonna do is probably The Last of Us. So we're gonna cover that and the controversy surrounding the third episode. So I will look for media and critics who went ham on that, just to kind of make fun of them, because I really don't think the episode was like super woke or anything. But maybe it's because they saw two men kissing. Maybe they were so disgusted by it that that's the only thing that they could say is that it was woke. But
Yeah, I don't want to see that either, but that doesn't make it woke necessarily.
yeah, and it's funny too because one of the actors is like completely straight and the other one's gay, like in real
Okay,
life. So I was like, like one really didn't have to prepare for it, and the one was like, God damn it. um,
funny.
but anyway, yeah, check us out. Hopefully, we can get this Last of Us stuff done by this week, and maybe have a show this next weekend. We'll see. But stay tuned. If not within this weekend, the next weekend we'll try to cover The Last of Us, at least whatever the current offering is. So my guess is we'll cover this, and when the show is finally over, we'll kind of do a season wrap up of the show when that happens.
All right.
All right. right, so thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, comment on the videos. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. Share this shit. And thank you for tuning in. You guys have a great night.
All right. Thanks for watching, everyone.
All right, bye-bye. It's like 7.